Mr. President, when I first came to the United States Senate, I was asked to serve on the Senate Judiciary Committee and considered it quite an honor. It's an extraordinary committee with a rich history of involvement in some of the most important issues of our time, and that's been the case for generations. Recently, when it was reformed, I was asked which subcommittee I wanted to serve on, and I chose the Immigration Subcommittee. I took it for two reasons. First, I'm a lucky American. My mother was an immigrant to this country. She was brought here at the age of 2 from Lithuania. Her mother, who brought her, didn't speak English, but my mom was a pretty smart little girl, and she spoke English and Lithuanian, and she was the translator for the family. They even called her into a courtroom as a little girl to translate for a person who was being charged so that they understood the law. My mother was an extraordinary woman, 8th grade education, but one of the smartest people I have ever known. I guess that's a son talking, but you might expect it. And I thought that I was lucky that she lived long enough to see me sworn into the United States Senate. This immigrant girl who became an American citizen saw her son become the 47th senator from the state of Illinois. That's my story. That's my family's story. That's America's story. That's who we are. We are a nation of immigrants. But for those blessed to be able to trace back their roots to indigenous people and Native Americans, all of us have come to this country, either ourselves personally, our parents or grandparents. Immigration means a lot to me because I think the diversity of this country is its strength. The fact that people were willing to sacrifice so much to come to the United States of America tells me something about them. Many of them risked everything, left everything behind, left their families behind, their places of worship, their language, their culture, their food, and came to a place they'd never seen before because they'd heard about what America was all about, a land of opportunity. So I wanted to be on that subcommittee. And the second reason that I wanted to be on the subcommittee is the immigration laws of the United States are a disaster. They are terribly broken. They do not serve our nation, either in terms of security or bringing the diversity which we need for our future. I've known this for a long time. It was just 6 or 7 years ago that we put together a group of senators, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. John McCain was leading the Republicans with Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Jeff Flake. On the Democratic side, myself, Senator Schumer, who just spoke on the floor, Senator Menendez of New Jersey, and Senator Bennett of Colorado. We sat down for months, night after night after night, looking at every section of the immigration law, this broken law, to say, how would we change this? How can we reach political compromises that serve the best needs of this nation? And we came up with it. We came up with this comprehensive bill and brought it to the floor of the Senate. And it passed with 68 votes. 68 votes. We finally had found a bipartisan answer. Just exactly what the American people sent us to do. We sent our work product over to the United States House of Representatives. They refused to even consider it. Wouldn't bring our bill up for a vote, wouldn't debate it, wouldn't offer an amendment, alternative, substitute, nothing. And here we sit with this broken immigration system. One of the issues that came up recently, I want to describe to my colleagues, or at least those listening, in the United States Senate. Here's what it comes down to. There are people who come to the United States to work. Many of them come on what is known as an H-1B visa. It's a specialty visa, and it says that in this situation, this company cannot find an American to fill the job and wants to bring in a talented person from another country on a temporary visa to work. Thousands come under this program each year. And many of them come from the country of India. They are trained engineers by and large, but they're also doctors, and they're professionals that are needed in communities all across our country. Well, we've run into a problem because once they're here and have been here for some time, many of them want to stay. That in and of itself is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. If they are productive employees making a business profitable, creating new jobs in the process, I want them to stay. Some of them were actually educated in the United States, and they're using that education working here, but now they want to be permanent residents in this country. There's a difficulty and a problem because we limit the number of people who can apply for what's known as green cards, employment-based visas, each year. The limitation is 140,000. It may sound like a lot, but believe me, there are many more, hundreds of thousands more, who are seeking these visas. And we have a problem, particularly when it comes to those of Indian descent. The problem is the fact that so many of them have come to fill these temporary jobs, work jobs, and are applying for green cards, that there are many more applications for green cards than there are actual cards to be issued. 140,000 total each year for the entire world. There are over 500,000 Indians who have come to this country and are asking for green card status. And the law says no more than 7% can come from any one country of the 140,000. If you do the simple math of about 10,000 each year and over 500,000 Indians waiting, imagine what that means. It means that many of them will never live long enough to qualify for a green card. So this has become very controversial, and many of them are desperate, and they should be. Their plight is now so uncertain. And it's complicated by the fact that if you come here on an employment-based situation, a temporary visa, H-1B, you can bring your family with you, your spouse and your children. But if you stay here for a period of time and your children reach the age of 21, they can no longer stay based on their parents' visa. They frankly are subject to deportation, and some are deported. I met the other night a large group of these Indians in the state of Illinois who came to me pleading for help. I want to help them. And I hope they understand, and those who are listening understand as well, that when it comes to immigration, I'm in favor of border security, I'm in favor of orderly immigration, but I'm in favor of immigration and the diversity it brings to this country and the talent it brings to this country. So I have a bill before us known as the Relief Act. It would lift that cap of 140,000 so that we could absorb into our country more each year who have been here already, are working here already, their families are established here already, just want a chance to be able to apply for citizenship ultimately. That's what my bill would do, but it does two other things. And I want to bring these points up for those who are considering my unanimous consent request, which I'm about to make. I want them to understand how personal and important this is to the people I'm talking about. One of the provisions I mentioned to you relates to the fact that if you bring children to the United States while you're working on those temporary visas, those children are protected until they reach the age of 21, but then they're subject to deportation. I cannot tell you the emotional scenes which I have witnessed in the last few weeks as these parents introduce me to their children and say to me, Senator, I'm in this long line waiting for a green card. My daughter, my 12-year-old daughter, could end up being 21 years old and deported while I'm still waiting. I want to take care of her. I want her to have a chance to go to school. I want her to have a bright future. But her fate is tied to the fact that there are not enough green cards for me to stay in this country. So one of the provisions of the Relief Act, and I urge my colleagues when I make this unanimous consent request to consider it, one of my provisions says that if you apply for a green card as a parent, the age of your children at that moment is basically frozen for legal purposes. That child cannot age out while you're waiting in line if you applied while they were still minors. This will protect these children from deportation, and it's one of the most important and humane things we can do. And the second thing is, if we are going to establish any standards or quotas for those who are allowed in this country to have employment-based visas and green cards, we shouldn't count the spouses and dependent children. Let's just count those who are frankly going to work as engineers and doctors in our communities. The net result of the Relief Act is to create a realistic way to lift the cap to allow more to come in who are qualified and have already been vetted and gone through the background checks, but to allow more to come in each year not to penalize the minor children who might age out while their parents are waiting, and to make certain that the spouses and dependent children aren't counted towards any ultimate quota. The Relief Act would lift country caps that limit the number of green cards that go to immigrants from any particular country. These country caps have contributed to this terrible backlog we currently have. But lifting these caps alone will not clear the green card backlog. Without more green cards, which is what I'm calling for, the current backlog of 800,000 people total, I mentioned 500,000 were from India, waiting for employment-based green cards will actually increase if we don't lift the cap by 300,000 in the next 10 years. This Relief Act is not novel or controversial. You remember earlier I talked about our comprehensive immigration bill. What I'm proposing today was included in it. It was a bipartisan proposal. It's one I think we should return to solve the problem. The Relief Act has been endorsed by many national business, immigrant, and labor organizations, including the New American Economy, the National Education Association, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, United We Dream, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, South Asian Americans Leading Together, United Chinese Americans, National Iranian American Council, Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, the American Hellenic Educational Progressive Association, which incidentally is the largest Greek American organization, and the Ancient Order of Hibernians, the largest Irish American organization in America. In light of the failure of our immigration subcommittee to take any action to solve this problem, I'm going to ask for unanimous consent to move this bill forward. And I would say to those who are considering whether they will accept or reject it, meet with these people in your state. Sit down with them and hear the plight that they face today. They are trying to follow the law, and the law is not responsive. As if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent the Judiciary Committee be discharged of S-2603 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. Further, that the bill be considered read a third time and pass, and the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.